Hello everyone. I'm Nasir Afsar, and we today will talk about the Ribavirin and Interferon as a combination to treat COVID-19 infection as a low-cost alternative to the available drugs. Objectives of this presentation would include a brief review about the current drug treatment options available for COVID-19, importance of this particular combination to treat COVID-19, especially with reference to its dosing, the current available scientific literature evidence, and certain things which need to be understood in context so that the right decision could be made. The references are given at the penultimate slide, which is slide 12, and my own info is given at the end of this presentation. The question is why it really matters. Why does it matter really? We know that novel coronavirus discovered in late 2019 is a coronavirus, is a beta coronavirus, which has now affected millions globally, leading to many deaths and mortality and morbidity, of course, and there are grave consequences in many other terms throughout the world. We call it now COVID-19, and initially it was called as the SARS-CoV-2. SARS-CoV was named after the initial epidemic seen in early 2000s. That was SARS. So that was this is considered as a consequence, as a sequel of the second sequel of this one. Although there has been MERS, or Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, in 2013 and 14 and so on. But this particular one is quite special. Apart from mortality and morbidity, which we have seen globally, there are serious economic implications around the world. So no wonder a global race has already kick-started to find out a cure as well as a prevention. So both drugs are being developed as well as the vaccine. As yet, there is no specific treatment available. That means we don't have any drug which was specifically developed against this particular coronavirus. But that doesn't mean there is no drug. Yes, we do have drugs, and those drugs are primarily the repurposed drugs. That means those were the drugs which were initially developed and approved for use in other certain other infections, but the same drugs can also be used in this particular disorder. So the repurposed antiviral drugs are generally quite costly, and hence they remain beyond reach of many. If I talk about my country, Pakistan, where the cost of the treatment is usually borne by the patients themselves, and given this is a communicable disease, so it's already in the masses. So we have a local transmission already in the country, like many other nations in the world, and that means anyone can suffer, and the cost will be borne by the patient themselves, which will definitely be beyond reach of many. So that means it is imperative to find better, cheaper, effective, and equally effective alternatives. So what is the treatment approach at the moment? Largely, it is supportive care, directed towards the signs and symptoms of this particular disease, which includes fever, body aches, dry cough, leading to shortness of breath and hypoxia. There is widespread systemic inflammation leading to cytokine storm, multi-organ involvement and failure, and people who recover, they experience generalized debility for many days. So it's really a cumbersome situation. Uh, Passive immunization, which depends on use of convalescent plasma transfusion, yes, it is helpful, especially if there is no other treatment options available. But remember, it's a transfusion, so hypersensitivity remains a concern because of the foreign proteins, of course, and TRALI, which is the transfusion-related acute lung injury. Now, I mean, this is quite interesting. People who will present with the COVID-19 will already have their lungs being involved, shortness of breath, hypoxia, and if those individuals are given transfusion and they develop TRALI, that will be actually a grave situation. So that means antiviral drugs remain crucial. They are still evolving. And in today's presentation, we will focus only on the best possible evidence available as yet. So let's see. What drugs are available with antiviral activity against COVID-19? So far, we have remdesivir, lopinavir-ritonavir as a combination, ribavirin, interferon. These are important drugs to consider at the moment. There are additional drugs being developed and being trialed, but so far we have sufficient data available and trials already conducted for these drug combinations, either in combination or given alone or in varying combinations. So we have now sufficient data to talk about these drugs. Remember, remdesivir was originally used in other viral infections, including Ebola in Africa, and lopinavir-ritonavir is used in HIV, and ribavirin and interferon are used in hepatitis C, for example. So we have the sufficient evidence and safety profile of these drugs already available. So we just need to repurpose them and use them when necessary. An earlier article by myself listed many of these potential drugs, and it got much attention globally and is freely available to download and see and read. Available in the list of the references at the end of this presentation. Now, the discussion probably won't be complete if we don't consider the problems observed with another perceived cost-effective and cheap treatment option, that is the chloroquine azithromycin combination. But remember, there is a caution. It may be less beneficial and more risky to use this combination. The media hype created earlier in March and in April this year about the efficacy of chloroquine and azithromycin as a game-changer drug is actually not supported by scientific research. Rather, larger studies suggest that this actually may be more problematic rather than providing solutions. So it is counterproductive, to be really honest. A larger study published a few days earlier included data comprising of over 96,000 patients who were studied, and they provided evidence that this combination, azithromycin and chloroquine combination, is actually related to more cardiac or heart-related deaths. That means primarily it leads to heart rhythm abnormalities, which could be lethal. So it should be remembered that this infection itself causes inflammation of myocardium, and a myocardial inflammation or myocarditis itself produces or predisposes to cardiac arrhythmias or heart rhythm abnormalities. So that means with this background problem if someone gets additional cardiotoxic drugs like chloroquine and azithromycin as a combination. It will actually have a multiplier effect and then on the unwanted side. So that is something which actually adds to the problem rather than solution. So this is out. Now, what promising treatment we have? Well, so far, remdesivir has drew much attention world over, and it was first trialed on compassionate grounds in COVID-19 patients who were quite critically sick, and it showed beneficial effects. So it was used in those patients as intravenous infusion, 200 milligram as a loading dose on first day, followed by 100 milligram daily for additional 9 days. So total 10 days duration of treatment was found beneficial for these patients. So FDA in USA also gave permission to conduct trials and experimental use of this drug again in patients. And now it has also been given non-exclusive license to be produced in countries like Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. And not only they will be producing this drug, but also will be exporting to other parts of the world. So now this is it's actually a global effort. So typical side effects of this drug remdesivir include nausea, vomiting, and raised liver enzymes. Now, remember, remdesivir is quite a costly drug. The recent calculations suggest that, for example, in Pakistan, the cost of the treatment would be much above 200,000 rupees, Pakistani rupees, which is beyond reach of the majority of the population. So that again makes it imperative to search for better feasible alternatives. So now let's see what feasible alternate drugs we have. Now there is one. I mean, there is a good news that we have at least one simple and feasible alternate as a combination, and we have quite good experience of using it as well in other conditions, of course. A study on Middle East respiratory syndrome tried Ribavirin 400 milligram orally twice daily for 10 days with pegylated interferon alpha 2A subcutaneously in a dose of 180 micrograms per week for 2 weeks. Remember, this is 10 days to 12 days, 14 days, so this much short duration of treatment. So just, I would say, 3 doses around of the interferon and 10 days duration of ribavirin. Please remember that this combination was quite effective in MERS, which is also another coronavirus infection, and we have also additional evidence that this particular combination will also be helpful in COVID-19. The beauty is this is quite low cost. For example, in Pakistan, the total cost of the treatment will be much under 20,000 Pak rupees, that means as compared to remdesivir, it will be even less than 1/10 of the total cost. Excuse me. Ribavirin and interferon has been trialed in patients of COVID-19 as a triple antiviral therapy with lopinavir-ritonavir and has been found beneficial. A trial from Hong Kong has suggested that this lopinavir-ritonavir is effective, but the triple combination is much better than lopinavir-ritonavir used alone. The ribavirin doses used in this particular trial were similar to that mentioned in the previous slide for the MERS. So again, this much dose is now established. The problems with this particular treatment is that interferon beta, which was used in this particular trial, is uh, not available in many countries, and if available, it is quite costly. It's almost 10 times or even more of cost as compared to interferon alpha. Yes, interferon beta is a bit considered more a bit more effective in catering this type of infections. But remember, the other type of interferon, which is interferon alpha, is also effective in COVID-19. So lopinavir, which is also used in HIV, is not that cheap. Again, it's quite costly, and it is also not readily available in many countries. So it has to be acquired through special centers and setups. So again, the access to this drug is not that easy. So interferon beta being costly, lopinavir being quite a special drug, has to be procured through special setups. So again, out of in this triple antiviral therapy, two of the three, there is lopinavir combination plus interferon beta. They are something which really create a problem of the availability. Anyhow, so then what is the feasible alternate then? I would say ribavirin and interferon alpha would also be effective in COVID-19. We have evidence, at least in MERS and in SARS, and even now in this COVID-19, although partial, but yes, we have the evidence. Now, typical side effects include nausea, vomiting, and rest liver enzymes. Some concerns regarding the anemia induced by ribavirin use. Usually it appears in the dose-dependent manner, and it is most commonly seen around 1 week of treatment. However, that anemia could respond to erythropoietin, especially if it is started concomitantly. Now, but remember, you don't need to give erythropoietin always, because with experience and the experience with the hepatitis C treatment suggests that the doses of 400 milligram of ribavirin doses, they usually do not produce anemia. So anemia is, not that common with this particular dose. So yes, the earlier studies which used a higher dose of ribavirin, they reported prevalence of anemia. Of course, not always, but yes, quite often. But remember, there was a high dose ribavirin. Here we are using 400 milligram and has been trialed in patients and found effective. So what are the take-home messages from this particular discussion? Ribavirin and pegylated interferon, which is propylethylene glycol fixed interferon alpha, is a useful combination, and it should be tried, especially in low-income countries like Pakistan and other South Asian countries, India, Bangladesh, and stuff. Ribavirin should be used in 400 milligram doses, and anemia would likely be minimal, if at all. Triple therapy like ribavirin and interferon with lopinavir is better if available. Now, one of the most important points is you need to start the treatment early to get the maximal benefit of this combination. You don't need to wait for patient's condition to deteriorate. So early treatment is an important element which will determine success with this therapy. These are the references in alphabetical order. Thank you very much for your interest in the presentation, and you can visit the online profiles and direct your queries through the email. Thank you so much for your interest in the presentation.